Well, payback. It's a mama. You know, if you can't be nice to your neighbors, you can't have nice things. And that's what the Houthis are finding out right now as their international airport in Sanaa just went up in flames. You see here the footage from people at the airport. I would not be one of those people out there filming that right now because the attacks are likely not finished. And so Israel may very well be continuing those attacks throughout the night and taking out more than just the airport in Sanaa. Now, we're going to get into all that and talk about what they likely used to destroy the airfield, why they did it, and what the overall effects of this might be on the region. But thank you for being with us today. It is about 5 o'clock in the afternoon here in Erbil, Iraq. I'm at the FBR safe house, and I just want to make sure that I've got Wi-Fi here. Want to switch the Wi-Fi network real quick so that we can make sure not to lose connection because we've had some problems with that. But actually, so far we've got pretty good connection. Yeah, it looks like we. That's interesting. Current bit rate is low. Okay. Yeah. Think we'll be better off if we switch the connection here, and then we will take it from there. Uh, the United States later on tonight. Okay, it looks like we got the connection back. There we go. Yeah, so I'll be heading back to the United States later on tonight, and in the meantime, I had to get everything all packed up, so I had to put my Starlink away and couldn't use that to connect with on today's live. So the connection might not be all that great, but we're going to talk about the connection is much worse in Yemen right now, without a doubt. So again, just I'll show you the video of the that this is coming out of the attacks. Now you see there are planes on the tarmac. Some of those planes have been destroyed. This may have been the first wave of attacks, and there may be multiple attack waves going. Yeah, this is pretty serious stuff. Now, you need to understand a few things about the airfields in Yemen. First of all, there are only about 5 airports in Yemen that can handle international traffic. 3 of them are in areas controlled by the Houthis, and 2 of them are in areas controlled by the regime. The airports that are controlled by the regime are still open in Aden, and there's one other one. Now, there's not a lot of flights to Yemen because there's not a lot of people that want to go to Yemen. I mean, the sand people who live in Yemen don't fly a whole lot unless they're on the receiving end of a JDAM. And there aren't, other than aid workers and things like that, not a lot of people. I mean, it's just not a real garden spot for spring break, if you know what I mean. Now, if you ask me, we should involuntarily ship all of the spring break party crowd uh, to Yemen next year and let them have a giant beach party in Yemen and see how they like that. Because I know that I'm tired of them coming to my house. And I just read something the other day where Panama City Beach, Florida, is banning spring break from now on because people are just out of control. These teenagers that go down there, they are just literally out of control. So same thing on Tybee Island with this orange crush, uh, just absolutely out of control. So it'd be great, man, and let them go out of control over there. That'd be fine, fine with me. So Of the five airports in Yemen, as I say, three of them are in Houthi-controlled areas. The airport at Hodeidah, there's the airport in Sanaa, and the third one I don't remember. Uh, it's like Taiz or something like that. And right now, the port in Hodeidah was struck. Let's see, yesterday, um, and when the Israelis struck the port at Hodeidah, they also struck the airport there. So that's gone, non-operational. The the airport in Sanaa is now non-operational, and the last airport they have is a place called Taiz, but that's in a contested area. The airport itself is under Houthi control since 2015, but recent reports indicate ongoing military activity in the region, which means there's no civilian aircraft that's going to fly in there. So it's really only open to military air. Now, the Israelis gave fair warning before they destroyed the airport in Sanaa today. They um, sent messages to they took over the airwaves in Yemen, if you can believe that. They hacked into the local TV stations and radio stations and broadcast a message that anybody near the airport needed to get away. And so what it looks like people did is they actually went to the airport in order to film the destruction, because there's a lot of footage coming out right now of explosions at the airport. Now, this is not going to hurt the Houthis all that much because they don't really have an air force. As I said, tourism not really a thing in Yemen, and so it's going to be. Oh, I need to refresh here. So it's going to be um, symbolic more than anything that the IDF destroyed the place, right? Uh, Now, the Houthis did have a very small air force, mostly helicopters. Uh, you wouldn't want to fly in any of the aircraft that the Houthis had control of, because you can imagine maintenance is not really a thing, right? And so it's the uh, the connection is not great, but it'll get better. Don't worry, it'll get better. Just making sure it's still running. Now, that airport in Sanaa has been struck, I mean, multiple times, all the way back to 2015. The Saudis destroyed the airport. Then it was fixed, and when the Saudis and the UAE did it, it was roundly condemned by the UN as a blockade because aid came in through the airport. But and I'm sure that you'll hear that again, without a doubt. Uh, at one point, they had almost 2 million people a year coming into Yemen through that airport, 38 flights a day back in like 2007. But they haven't had that since then. And again, other than aid workers, aid flights, and some military flights and things like that, there just weren't very many flights coming and going out of there. So the Houthis, uh, you know, are going to have to change their plans for Christmas or spring break or whatever. But like I say, not many of them have passports, so they're not really going to care all that much. Now, let's talk about the ongoing buildup of forces in the region. The United States has continued to move more and more aircraft down there, and not just aircraft, but troops. The uh, bad missile system battery that they sent down there uh, over to Israel, I realize comes with about 1,000 troops. So we've got a lot of troops in the region, but there was news coming out today that we sent several more B2, I'm sorry, B-52 bombers down there, which means right now the United States has uh, maybe close to half of our total B2 and B-52 fleet in the region, or at least within range of the region, so that they could strike in a coordinated attack on Iran, which I still believe may happen. Yesterday, President Trump is going to have to make a military strike on Iran if he wants to save any kind of credibility whatsoever. And we don't need to move as much stuff to the region as we have if we're just making a show of force. The total amount of just cargo aircraft flights that are going to Israel and Qatar and uh, I- Iraq, right here at the airport in Erbil, and Diego Garcia and everything like that, are just far above the level that you would need for a simple show of force. The number of ships we have in the region has grown, you know, substantially. So we are getting close to the moment when everything's going to come to a head with Iran. Now, there's a great video by my friend Chris Cappy, his new YouTube channel that is called Cappy's Army. You should go watch that. It talks about how the United States is preparing to attack Iran. And he goes into very granular detail about the number of GBU 57 bunker buster bombs that can be carried on each B 2 bomber, and how many 5,000-pound bombs can be strapped to one of those things, and what the target packages would look like, the 5 nuclear facilities inside Iran that would have to be destroyed to, uh, affect what President Trump wants to do, which is to destroy Iran's nuclear capability. Not only that, but they've got like 3 uranium mines that would probably have to be destroyed as well, that have deep underground stuff. They have some research facilities that would need to be destroyed, and they still have some air defense capabilities that would have to be jammed or taken out altogether. This all comes in a aerial tasking order that is absolutely enormous. This You realize that before they're going to undertake a an attack of this scale, the United States is going to plan out every single sortie of that entire campaign, and which aircraft is going to fly to which target, and which bombs are going to drop on that target, and everything like that. It all has to be planned out ahead of time. And so, like he points out, that the aerial tasking order for the Gulf War was the size of remember shock and awe and all that. That was the size of a phone book. It was like this thick. And so that obviously takes time. Of course, Israel has to do aerial tasking orders too for their mission. And it's kind of surprising that they were able to respond by bombing the airport in Sanaa and the airport and the port facility in Hodeidah yesterday and today. That's impressive. But what that tells us is that Israel was already planning this mission before that uh, Houthi missile made it through and struck Ben Gurion Airport a couple days ago. They had this mission on deck. I think that's safe to say, because otherwise it would have taken them longer to put it together. It's spectacularly complex to run a mission like this that goes 2,000 kilometers from Israel, and they've got to provide their own aerial refueling all the way down there. uh, someplace to land. They've got to have a quick reaction force in case pilot gets shot down. I mean, there's just a lot of moving parts that go into that. It's not just like, Netanyahu makes a call and goes, go bomb their airport. And they go, yes, sir. And they just jump in the plane and fly off with some bombs and go drop them. No, every single step of that thing is planned out. Every contingency is planned for. And so the fact that they got it done 2 days after the missile fell on Ben Gurion says that this is something they had planned already. It was, at least it was planned, put on the shelf, and ready to go as soon as they pulled the trigger. And what that tells us is that Israel was not actually ignoring the Houthis over the last 6 weeks or so. Uh, they had not responded to any of the previous missiles that the Houthis fired at Israel, or drones or anything like that. They just shot them down and just sort of ignored them, but they weren't ignoring them. They were just biding their time and preparing. And the thing that I don't quite understand is, why did it take the Israelis to take out the port and the airport? I talked about it yesterday a little bit. The port's been struck many times, but it's kind of hard to blow up a port. You can blow up the cranes, you can blow up the buildings, but other than that, it's just a deep place in the water with a concrete pier. And blowing that pier up would be would be a lot of work for sure. So, and not only that, but if they do blow up that port, there's dozens of sites in the 2,000 kilometers of uh, seashore that Yemen has that could accommodate ships, little coves and harbors and things where they could pull ships in and they could offload stuff from Iran. So there's that. So I don't think that this is over. I don't think you've seen the end yet of the attacks on not just the Houthis, but also on Iran. I think that it's likely that Iran gets struck at some point in the near future, but in reality, Iran is already being struck uh, as we speak. I mean, I kind of jokingly talked about it on the CBN Live I did yesterday, that, gosh, things just keep going kablooey in Iran. And who knows? I mean, somebody's just shouldn't be smoking near gas tanks or something. But man, the port blew up in Bandar Abbas, and motorcycle factory blew up that just so happened to make engines for their motorcycles that look and sound exactly like the engines in Shahed 136 drones that Iran is making and selling and using all around. And underground facilities are catching fire, and other, just unfortunate spontaneous combustion is happening all over Iran over the past couple of weeks. And one could be forgiven for saying, gosh, it looks a lot like Iran is being Hezbollah with by the Mossad. And if the Israelis had a plan to wipe out Hezbollah, take out all of their top leadership, Operation Grim Reaper, uh, et cetera, take out their communications nodes and et cetera, then don't you think that the Mossad would have had a plan to do the same thing for Iran? Of course they do. They've shown already that they have the capability to get deep inside the Iranian government and strike at will, and they value that kind of creativity in war. So it's not you know, it's not a wild conspiracy theory to say that it's likely that the Mossad is right now pulling the trigger on various, let's just call them exploits, that they have embedded in the Iranian industry, government, military, and even, critical infrastructure. And those exploits, whatever they happen to be, are things that the Mossad had planned out and had, you know, uh, packages prepared for years, most likely. And they're deciding that now is the time to pull the trigger. Now's the time to make it happen. And now that they've got the Trump administration on their side, and it looks like the Trump administration is likely going to uh, be striking at Iran before too long. Of course, they're not going to do that in a vacuum, and we won't do it unilaterally. We will. Israel will know before we go, and will likely assist with that. If Pete Hegseth has any brains whatsoever, when we go in, if we're going to strike Iran, which we've not done before, at least not kinetically, if we're going to do it, we need to do it all the way. We need in for a penny, in for a pound, folks. We need to strike Iran so hard that it will literally collapse what's left of their flailing economy and cause their regime to fall. We need to put out messages to the people of Iran saying we have no beef with you. We're going to do you a favor and we're going to reboot your country for you. And then you guys do with it whatever you want. Just don't be a threat to us and we won't have any problems. Sayonara. So I have more faith and confidence in Pete Hegseth doing this than I certainly did in Lloyd Austin. And I think that it's likely that if we do go kinetic against Iran, we're going to do it in a big, big way. This will be shock and awe times 10. And, it's going to be a message to China. It's going to be a message to Russia. It's going to be Russia has said, don't do it. Now Russia is in the position that Joe Biden was in. Don't, don't, don't. Um, and we saw how well that worked out with Joe Biden. So I saw a question go by there I wanted to answer. Hang on a second. Where does Yemen make their money? Is there oil in all that sand? No, there's not. Not really. Yemen really doesn't make much money unless you call a thriving black market making money. They rely very heavily on aid from the rest of the world and have for over a decade. They have very little that they export. As a matter of fact, let's just ask here. The Yemenis do have some oil and natural gas, uh, but this is all pre-war. So they export a little bit of seafood, coffee, believe it or not. They have a little bit of coffee uh, and honey because they're cedar cedar. I think it's CIDR, SIDR, something like that. Honey is prized globally, but those are not things that are going to uh, really support the economy. So since they have so much infrastructure damage since the war started back in like 2005, their exports have been severely restricted, and the the money that does come in from exports doesn't really go to the government. It goes to whatever tribal leader happens to control that particular export facility or export site. We've bombed a bunch of those. There were some coves that were being used to transport very dirty crude oil to ships, and take them, take it to China or someplace like that. And we bombed those areas, or Israel did actually. Um, Now, so other than exporting camel dung as fire starter, it's probably not. This is part of the reason why Yemen is in as bad a shape as it is, and it's another one of those places on earth that you go. If this is a place on earth where people cannot make it without charity from the rest of the world, then why are they even living there? I mean, and if we're giving charity to, uh, people there, obviously poor people that are starving, and as I mentioned yesterday, I've had more than 400,000 people die of starvation in Yemen over the last 10 years, and that's terrible. It's horrific. That's not our fault. That's the fault of poor leadership, selfish, corrupt leaders inside Yemen. Uh, so even though they do have some oil, it's their whole oil industry is essentially non-functional at this point. Uh, their export terminals, they have one at Ras Isa that's been blown up, non-operational. They have one in Hodeidah that's non-operational, got blown up as well yesterday. That you saw the huge, fireballs. That's from the oil terminal going up in smoke. Now, all we need to do is move on to doing the the same show on the oil island in southern Iran, and then we might actually be getting to the source of all of this terror around the Middle East. And I I don't see why we shouldn't do that. Right now, our adversary China is buying all of the oil that comes out of Iran and buying it at a very steep discount because Iranian oil is under sanctions. And China is using ghost fleet ships to evade the sanctions and support Iran and get oil at a tremendous discount. So blowing up the oil port facility in Iran. So I'm trying to remember the name of the island here. Um, oh, Karg Island. That's right, Karg Island in the northern Persian Gulf. It is their main crude export terminal, handles over 90% of Iran's oil exports. So blowing up that terminal would essentially lead to the collapse of the Iranian regime. That's a positive. And it would make it far more difficult for China to prosecute its coming conflict with the United States. So it's like a twofer. Why don't we do this? And I guess we'll see whether or not Pete Hegseth and the Trump administration have the political will to take the heat from the rest of the world, because you know that the UN and uh, everybody, the European Union, are all going to wring their hands and get their undies in a wad and say, "Oh gosh, you're causing famines." And no, no, we're not causing famines. We are freeing the Iranian people from an oppressive regime so that they can rebuild their country better than it is today. That's what we're doing. And we wouldn't have to do this if those people would play nice with others, but they can't seem to do that. They just, some fish don't swim in the same pond with other fish. And so don't look at us. We're just doing what we have to do to make our country safe. And we'd be making the rest of the world safe. Um, Now, there has been some sabotage at that Karg Island facility already. Mysterious fires. There were some suspected drone attacks that took place there. And but it's still operational. And if it's not target number, maybe six, out in the potential coming air war against Iran, then somebody's not thinking very clearly. Excuse me. Let me get some water here. All right, let's take other questions here. Thank you for that, PC. I appreciate that. And folks, I wanted to also thank you for assisting my wife's cousin in Haiti with their adoption of these two sweet little Haitian kids, because we have raised more than $5,000 for them in the last couple of days, and I really appreciate that. Are your you can go just look at the list of my videos here on the channel, and you can see the video interview that I did from Iraq to Haiti with Connie's cousin about the process that they're going through and the threat from gangs, Haitian gangs, that are uh, putting them in an untenable situation because they've got these two kids they're trying to adopt. They've been working on this for years, and it uh, it's not happening because there's no government in Haiti. And in the meantime, the gangs are encroaching closer and closer to the place where they live. And if the gangs come in there, they are going to rape all the women and kill all the men and probably just let the babies out to starve. So everybody's telling Connie's cousins, they're Americans, you guys got to get out of Haiti. You got to get out of there. And they want to get out of there. But they can't leave these two babies behind. They've been caring for these babies for 3 years now. And so they're really stuck between a rock and a hard place and they need some help. So be praying for Kevin and Emily down in Haiti that God will bring a breakthrough for them in that. Okay. A matter of fact, I'm going to put the link in the chat in case you wanted to go, and they got a GoFundMe. It's called, I'll just GoFundMe. There it is. So here's the link to the GoFundMe if you want to help Kevin and Emily in that terrible rock and a hard place situation that they're in. Okay. Okay. So I will be going live also over at chuckholton.com with an Ask Me Anything at the top of the next hour. So in about 25 minutes. And if you're a supporter over there at the locals page, you can come on and we'll have a much smaller group. I'll be able to really interact with you and answer any question you have about my recent trip to Syria, what's going on in Iraq, about what's happening in Israel or Yemen or Lebanon or any place. Whatever you want. We'll talk about it. You get to set the agenda over there on locals. So if you're not a subscriber or supporter over there, you're going to want to go over to chuckholton.com and become one. And then you get access to me. All right. Uh, are there more sudden explosions in Iran? Yes, there have been. And let's see if I can get a list. Um, we'll just call them tragedies. Uh, so I would say there's been probably at least five sudden, unexplained tragedies that have happened in Iran over the last few days or a few weeks, maybe. And you know that explosion that happened at the port in Bandar Abbas, or it was worse than was thought. They said yesterday it's caused between $2 and $3 billion of damage. The port is still shut down. There's some drone footage that came out of the port after the fires went out, and the whole thing is just wrecked. So that is the number one port for Iran. It's the busiest port in Iran, or it was. Okay. And man, like 90% of their containerized traffic came and went through that port. Well, now that port's shut down. The economy of Iran was already hanging by a thread. You shut down 90% of their container traffic, and that's going to hasten the demise of the regime very quickly. Now, let's talk about some of these other things that have happened. Um, I want to go back and just remind you about the helicopter crash that killed the former president of Iran uh, back in May of last year, because it was a kind of head scratcher. Not that the aircraft went down. The area where they were flying was a stupid place to be flying a helicopter. And it was an old helicopter that was hard to get parts for. They probably didn't maintain very well, et cetera, et cetera. The real question is, what was he doing out there? Because all it was like going to inaugurate some dam with Azerbaijan or something. And so it's just there was no evidence found of foul play in the crash itself, but one has to wonder if the regime didn't want that guy out of the way, uh, because and just sent him off on something like that and had somebody sabotage the aircraft. Don't know, but so we have the port explosion that happened April 26th. Okay, then you have an explosion at a gunpowder factory in Isfahan, April 29th. Uh, and one person was killed, two others injured there. The facility was under the supervision of Iran's Supreme National Security Council. And no sabotage has been confirmed yet, but the proximity of this incident to the port blowing up, it makes you kind of go, huh, well, oh, it make you wonder. A power station blew up May 3rd after a 4.0 magnitude earthquake. That's not a big earthquake. And Iran has earthquakes all the time. I've been through quite a few 4.0s where we live in Panama. And, you'll go like, whoa, the house is shaking a little bit. And that's about it. But this power station went up, and residents reported hearing a blast before the earthquake happened. So not really sure exactly what happened there, if it was the power plant that was targeted, or if there was some secret underground facility that just experienced a sudden, uh, you know, unexpected rapid disassembly, and that caused something that's felt like a 4.0 earthquake. Who knows? There's one other thing that doesn't it- and then the last one that was the motorcycle plant that was making motors that likely were motors for Shahed drones. There's also been a real surge in the Iranian regime executing prisoners. In the last 4 days, they've executed 22 people. And this should make it more difficult for negotiations, although I don't know if they are. It seems like Steve Witkoff is going hat in hand to the mullahs and going, please, we need a deal. We really want a deal. But Iran's just massacring people left and right for dissent or perceived dissent. And in so doing, I think that should disqualify them for, you know, any kind of a deal. But that's just me. I remember you talking about the internal gearing in a helicopter system having a magnet that bridges an electrical switch to notify the pilot when a fatal error is about to occur. Yeah, that's right. It's called a chip light. And there are multiple chip lights on the aircraft in the engine, but especially in the gearbox of the transmission, that, the rotors are connected to. And if the gears start coming apart or shaving off metal shavings, those metal shavings floating around in the oil in there will get attracted to this magnet. It'll complete a circuit, and you get a light in the cockpit that says, you better land pretty quick, because a helicopter with a seized up transmission has all of the aerodynamic capability of a cinder block. And you don't want to be in that helicopter, trust me. So, hi, Carol. Good to see you. Gaza supporters should understand that blaming Israel for kids dying is working toward Hamas propaganda success. And they say gather the children here, blame Hamas. They will move the children. That's right. So let's move over to Gaza real quick, and I'll just go over what we know. Not a lot has changed today there, but uh, what we do know is that Benjamin Netanyahu has said that, and the Israeli Knesset has voted unanimously to retake Gaza and occupy Gaza for the indefinite future. And they're going to continue destroying homes and businesses, just bulldozing Gaza, one building at a time. Basically, what they've done is they've gone to the plan that I've been advocating for since day one, that I've said ever since day one, when after October 7th, they took a couple hundred prisoners and took those hostages into Gaza. Then Netanyahu should have said, we are going into Gaza with full military force. Every tank, truck, bulldozer, you name it, that we have is going into Gaza, and we're going to start at the north end, and we're going to start destroying houses. And we will stop when we get our hostages back. And so it's up to you. If you want all of Gaza to become a parking lot, then just keep holding on to the hostages. But we are not going to stop until all of the hostages have been returned. Well, that's where they are now. The Israelis are calling up about 50,000 more troops, and they're planning on pouring them all into Gaza as soon as possible. They are going to revamp the aid system and set up their own aid distribution sites so that Hamas can't get a hold of them. And then they're going to uh, be holding that ground for the indefinite future. And it is Israel after all. So why not? There's a lot of Israelis saying it's about time. It's what we should have done a long time ago. I saw that Jimmy Bob sent 5 hot zone memberships. Uh, Thank you for doing that. Appreciate that. It's I would recommend you go over to chuckholton.com and become a member over there, because we put up a lot more over there because we can. There's a lot of videos that if I show you here on YouTube, I will get demonetized. Matter of fact, this one will probably be demonetized because I've been showing you this footage of the explosions and stuff that are happening at the airport in Sanaa. This is footage that's coming out from the international airport at Sanaa, and this is probably only the first wave of attacks. But you can see there uh, planes going up in smoke and lots of explosions and things like that. So uh, there's that. That's nice. I'm really kind of flabbergasted that the United States had not done that before. But it seems like the U.S. is trying not to strike critical infrastructure, that they're focusing more on something, whatever they deem to be military targets only. And you're not going to bomb your way out of this, folks. I mean, the U.S. military needs to understand that. And until you affect regime change, there's no way you can win this with bombs alone. Just not going to happen. And that's all I got to say about that, as they say. Okay. Yes, retake Gaza and send Gazans to Yemen. That's a great idea. Why don't they take the 2.5 million Palestinians in Gaza and just move them to Yemen? There's plenty of space out there. There's camels, there's dirt, there's more dirt, and it's kind of where God stores extra heat until he needs it somewhere else. I mean, it's ideal. There's not a lot to destroy. So since the Palestinians are so good at wrecking things, it'd be a really good place to put them. Because what do Palestinians love to do more than anything? They love to dig tunnels. They can dig tunnels to their heart's content all over Yemen. Just have at it. You guys can be, you know, like moles, just living underground. I personally, if I had to live in Yemen, I would dig a big hole and live in it because it'd be the only cool place you could find, probably. It and all the what do they call those people from Star Wars? The Sand People. Yeah, those people would have a harder time finding you, maybe. You'd hide out from them. All right, we got about 4,000 people online. And so let me just remind you to hit the like button and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. See that we've already got 5 new members that have signed up since we started this broadcast, but we should get a whole lot more than that. Normally we get several hundred from one of these. So no, then they will block the street. And again, they love rockets. Well, if we do end up going after Iran, then maybe their supply of rockets will dry up because they can't grow rockets out in the desert. Okay. Um, War Ranch LLC says cartel is in CONUS all over. Americans need to get ready. Uh, yeah, no question about that. Matter of fact, we're going to do another live before too long next week with Oscar Blue Ramirez down in Tijuana, Mexico, specifically about that topic. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that and be watching that one. So I've got to go to the airport here in a little bit and start my long journey back to the United States. I'll be heading to Virginia Beach, Virginia to watch my daughter and son-in-law graduate from college. And then we'll spend a little bit of spend a couple days taking care of some stuff at the lodge in West Virginia, and then we'll head back to Panama. Maybe that's the tentative plan right now. So it's been a good, productive trip to Syria. We've got a lot of stuff that will be coming out about that, but I just haven't had a chance to edit it yet. So stay tuned, and I'll get all that stuff edited and get it put up probably this coming week. All right. Okay, that's all I've got, folks. Thank you very much for watching. What's the trigger for attacking Iran? The trigger for attacking Iran is Iran not uh, completing negotiations to dismantle their nuclear facilities, which that's happening. I mean, we're one way or another. The Trump administration says those nuclear facilities are going to get dismantled. Either the Iranians can dismantle them in a way that they might be able to sell some of that stuff on eBay and make a little money, or we will dismantle them in a way that will not leave one stone upon another. So they can take their pick. All right. God bless you. We'll see you next time. Take care.